Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy,
powered by TrustArc.
Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
Welcome to part 3 of our Stockholm episodes. The interview you are about to hear started as yet another quick chat that was intended actually for last week's episode. But before we knew, our guests, Kay and myself, had talked for a full half hour about the role of data protection in the United States and the differences with Europe and the rest of the world.
Go figure.
So, Odia Kagan is partner and chair of GDPR compliance and international privacy at Fox Rothschild LLP in Philadelphia. And you may very well know her from her LinkedIn post where she summarizes data protection related news, developments for a large audience, a little bit like we would do our weekend privacy episodes. Odia is certainly not shy to give her opinion, and you will also hear that during this episode. My name is Paul Breitbart.
I'm Kay Royal. And they'll come to Serious Privacy. You know, one day I'm actually going to hit the accent right, and then I'll be done saying it.
Ja, du pratar mycket bra svenska, ja.
Yeah, okay. One of y'all that speaks then is going to have to tell me what Paul's been saying to me.
That you're starting to talk quite decent Swedish.
I'll get one phrase at a time down. Oh, that's so
funny.
funny.
That's how I learn it on Duolingo, one phrase at a time.
One phrase at a time. But no, it was fantastic to speak to Odia. The conversation that we have, y'all are about to hear, is really good. We even built in the unexpected questions, so that's fabulous. So, Paul, what about if we just cut straight to the conversation, which was really fun?
Yes, I agree. Let's go to Stockholm. We're sitting here with Odia Kagan. Odia, tell us a little bit who you are, why you are here in Stockholm.
So I am Odia Kagan. I am a partner and chair of GDPR compliance and international privacy at Fox Rothschild in the US. I always think of myself when I look in the mirror, I'm Elsa from Frozen. And then I always get disappointed that there's no sparkles around me or snow or blonde hair or anything. But like in spirit, right?
In spirit, you're Swedish.
I'm Scandinavian, exactly, right? So I happened to be I was invited to last year's conference and I enjoyed it. And I guess the audience enjoyed it. So I was asked to come back and, how could I say no, right?
Are we the only two Americans here?
Well, no, Peter Fleischer is here. So that's at least the third one.
Oh, I thought he was based here in Europe.
He's based here in Europe.
But he is American. Gotcha. Yeah, I flew in from South Carolina.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
New York,
brutal trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier than Israel. I fly to Israel a lot.
I've never been to Israel.
So it's an easier 7 hours as opposed to 11. So it's still easier.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I was going to fly here from Arizona. So it was at least 4.5 hours shorter.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. But now one thing, Odia, let me just say straight off, I've always loved your sense of style. I think I said this to you at IAPP in DC as well.
Thank you.
Because she has the funky boots and the bright colors. I can't pull off the great hair. And I love the funky boots and the bright colors. Not that any of y'all doubted that whatsoever, but would it kill y'all to know that my boots and my shoes are in pod storage and I have no clue where they are other than the ones I brought for tomorrow? Killing me.
I have been there. We had our house renovated for 5 months and lived in our own basement for 5 months. And that was fine because our basement is, like twice the size of the apartment I grew up in.
Okay.
But I only took like 2 essential shoes or something from upstairs that was locked. And yeah.
And you were sitting there thinking 2 will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Mine's going to be about 18 months because it's supposed to be about a year after they pour the foundation. They hadn't even started clearing the land yet. Meanwhile, I'm living with my daughter and her 3 kids under 5. Yeah. Anyway, let's
Maybe
get back to a
maybe
hobby.
the shoes are safer in storage, though.
It could be. If we're going to use this as an episode, you got to have the unexpected question. I don't have my book with me. Unexpected question.
So it's unexpected for you too, right?
Yeah,
now.
it is. Usually I have a book that I open randomly and it's usually unexpected for me too. So unexpected question. Planes, trains, or automobiles? Ships. I'll go with that one too.
Ooh, we were talking about this. I took a boat bus to here the first time, and that was cool. I think probably automobiles because it gives me some sort of unexplainable sense of control over my destiny when I know that I can just
You're
get
driving
into
the
my car and
car.
I go. When I'm traveling and I sort of depend on Ubers, for some reason it makes me feel like, I'm not in control. And apparently my husband tells me this is a generational issue because apparently, Gen Z and the sort of younger generation no longer has this and also has no kind of desire to,
They don't care.
to learn how to drive either. And
Because they don't want to own a
need
car.
it. And because
Yep.
it's because of the transportation kind of, having Ubers.
They
or
saw their
public
parents in road
transportation
rage in the
and-
middle of traffic jams and they're over that. Paul?
Well, no surprise, it's trains. I love train travel, and I hated the fact that Stockholm is just too far for this couple of days to come by train because it's an over 24-hour trip because you need a night train to get here. But no, if I could have done this by train, I would have. And
But instead you walked.
no, I had to. Unfortunately, I had to fly. I mean, I could walk 500 miles and 500
It's like the
more,
sun,
but it's
exactly.
like
Walk
but
500
it would even be
miles.
more than that. So to get here for the weekend would be too short. But
Well, I'm going to go ships. I love cruises. I love ships. I think it's fantastic. They take the worry away. But if I am traveling to get somewhere, I'm with her. I want my cars, but that doesn't surprise anyone who listens because I now have, I was about to say a new Mercedes, but it's not a new one. It's new to me. It's 2014, but my husband knew how much I missed giving up my 2001 Mercedes AMG because I got mad at it because the air conditioning broke in Arizona. And so he bought it, whatever. I don't know what to call it, but he found me a 2014. It's not an AMG, but it is a V6. And I say she doesn't purr, but she growls and she has sport mode. Yeah, it's a little 2-seater coupe with the sunroof. So it's a SLK 350, 2014. So it was a good price. Oh my God, I love driving that thing so much. And I love my Slingshot, my Maleficent Slingshot. Oh my God, she's fantastic. So cars. Definitely cars. But if I had to travel to get somewhere, teleportation.
that was not one of the options you
I
gave us.
know. It's an unexpected question. Let's get back to something happy to think about, which is where we are. So you were invited last year. Are you speaking this year?
Yeah,
You
tomorrow.
are? Yes, I knew that. On what?
So I'm going to give the U.S. perspective on the data protection framework, and then I'm going to participate in a panel that's talking
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
So
So what is the current US perspective on European
On
data
the thingy.
protection? Is it envy or is it thank God we don't have this at the moment?
I think that maybe it's neither. I mean, specifically with the data protection framework, I think there is the, sort of ongoing frustration with the situation. I think generally, especially on, the Norwegian commissioner here was speaking about the practitioner's view as opposed to the DPA view.
Right.
And my view on the DPF and this whole situation, right? I have a hashtag called #cry and pray. Because that's what we can do, right? Like we as practitioners, we're advising companies on what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the concept of, hey, I will, and Max Schrems actually said this in a webinar, said, if this gets bad enough, then the companies will use their lobbying collateral to lobby Congress to facilitate a change.
Right.
And maybe that's not their first priority in their lobbying collateral. But even if yes, right? Okay, so there's like 3.5 or 5.5 companies that can do that. And then the hundreds of thousands of other companies can literally do nothing other than sometimes be really stuck, sometimes expend a lot of money to move the needle in a way that's incrementally invisible to be compliant with something they can never be compliant with because they have no control over the government surveillance, right? So I think that part of, this is
Right.
kind of a political issue.
Mhm.
And it really is a political issue. And I think this is obvious from the Latour complaint, where the explanations for the complaint were very political. They were, okay, we need, autonomy in European businesses and we need to be independent. And that has nothing to do with the NSA and the cookies, right? So I think that's very frustrating. And the other piece, and that I'm going to talk about more tomorrow, is I think there is first of all, there's a big gap in perception between what's actually going on in the U.S. on the privacy side and what Europeans think is going on in the U.S., right? You know those memes, like what I do, what my mom thinks I do, what I think, what I actually do, right? So in the U.S. seems like this, like, I don't know, beggar in the street kind of thing on privacy enforcement. Meanwhile, there's actually a lot of stuff that's going on. So there's a gap between that. And also, there is also a gap between, while I do think that, the issues that have been raised and will be raised by the Europeans on the commercial principles of the DPF, right? Which are, literally copy-paste with Control-H, replace the name. Yeah. And so there are arguments. The arguments have been brought up. They've been brought up at the EDPB, the Article 29 Working Party, right there. Again, that part is beyond our control. It's already done. And it might be revised, but that's, again, out of our control. What we can say is, or understand, is that even though the principles look the same as they did in 2015, they don't mean the same thing anymore.
That's interesting. Tell me more.
So,
because I'm one of the voices that says, hey, the principles are still the same, not only as in 2015, but basically going back to the original safe harbor.
They're the same. The paper there is the same. Yeah. And then I see, as much as as I represent U.S. companies and I, sort of am part of the U.S. view, that, you can't argue with the very fact that it's literally the same, right? But in action, it's not the same. And the reason is that when you look at this document, you are reading into it what you already know has been going on and the FTC has been standing behind in the past few years. So 8 years ago, when we said personal information, it meant one thing. It means a different thing now. I think there are very few people that can say out loud, that can read a privacy notice and said, we collect non-personal information, parentheses, IP addresses, and not realize this privacy notice was written in 2016, right? So personal information is different. Data minimization now has enforcements behind it. It has Cafe Press. It has Drizzly. It has FTC guidance on data minimization, on retention limitation. There's fines. The other, and this is interesting because I read the UK adequacy decision on the US, and the way that they reach the conclusion, unlike the EDPB, is they actually say, when reading this, we are taking into consideration the entire environment, including one, what the FTC has been saying, and two, the US laws. So even though the framework doesn't have specific requirements officially, you are dealing with companies that are all, one, subject to FTC enforcement and need to do that anyway. And number two, companies that are probably falling under the jurisdiction of at least one of the 13 laws that are already in effect. So at
state level, you mean?
Yeah. So the DPF doesn't have the right to delete, but CPRA and Colorado CPA and all of the rest have the right to delete. So it stands to reason that you have the right to delete, right? Automated decision making. DPF doesn't do it, but the state laws do.
No, that's true. But from a legislative perspective and from sound and proper legislation, I think it's pretty strange that the European Commission never saw fit to update those principles to align with the GDPR. Not so much this time around as the last time around, because when Privacy Shield was negotiated, the text of the GDPR was done. So already at that time, it should have been updated to include those new principles that were missing under Safe Harbor.
But somehow it wasn't.
And again, right, like that part, the kind of normal companies of the US unite kind of thing. We don't have the power to do that, right?
No, I know that.
So all we can do is basically, and I think this is sort of more or less of a US perspective, but rather sort of a kind of message to companies certifying and recertifying. So I think the message to companies, even recertifying, is the fact that this was okay under Privacy Shield 3 years ago doesn't mean that it will be okay now, even though it's the same paper.
The concept changed.
Because the FTC is looking at it differently, and therefore the program you had that you got certified under, even though the language hasn't changed, you maybe should look at it again, because the FTC, and I don't know, they were talking about like the Swedish authority looking into pixels and trackers, right?
Right.
If you do pixels and trackers and you certified 3 years ago, chances are
But
you really were not thinking
Your
about your
pixels and
pixels and trackers, right? Maybe they were non-personal information that was anonymized.
Right. They didn't know what they were, and they weren't being held accountable for not knowing what things on their website do, which I think was really critical. What do you think? We're in 2023. We know what's coming in 2024. We don't know what the results are going to be. We know we have a huge election year coming. What do you think is going to change or stay the same? Should the administration change or stay the same?
So I like that the chair of the Norwegian Commission put in her explanation of why they used the emergency procedure that they had courage as a value in their in their plan and were acting on it.
Mhm.
So I really think that courage should be a value in the plan of whatever administration it is after the elections.
I like
because I think that, I've been reading 2 really interesting books about this, about courage. One of them is Courage is Calling. It's by Ryan Holiday. And the other one is Robert Greene and 50 Cent. It's called The 50th Law, and it talks all about courage. And I think that part, it sounds kind of naive, but hopefully it sounds more ambitious than naive. I think this part of dealing with difficult questions and not kicking them down the road is really important. I think that there aren't really on the privacy side, there really aren't fundamental differences of opinions across the aisles with respect to the fundamental principles, right? One time, I think when the ADPPA was attempted, right? I think I said, right, no fair information principles were harmed in the making of this law, right? Because we have no argument about that. We have an argument about the private right of action.
Right.
We have an argument about preemption.
Yep.
Mhm.
We have an argument maybe about who is the enforcement authority and what should the scope of its authority be?
Or how far the government can reach or not into one's private home.
Right.
And the scope, well, you don't have an argument about that, but I have an argument with US law about the scope of application. Who is protected under the law? So
Right.
far, it's only residents and
Yeah,
citizens.
this is his sticking point.
I feel unprotected.
It's not even just residents and
Yeah.
citizens. It's also in a lot of states, there are different thresholds
Mhm.
as to whether or not you apply.
Yeah.
And those are really, by the way, from a practical perspective, those are really difficult, I think.
Yeah.
For the amount of effort sometimes you need to expend in order to figure out whether or not you fall in scope for the laws
It's easier
is
to
more
protect
complicated
everything.
than
Yeah.
to just do it.
Just do it.
So I think this is an issue where I think it would be a good idea for somebody, it reminds me of, the show House of Cards,
Mhm.
where, there was one election and the character there had these Post-it notes with the people and the different opinions, and they went and they actually talked to each person and figured out what their issues are and, explained to them and did that needs to be done. I don't think there are really big differences of opinion. I think it's really important. And I think that the fact that, people are saying that this is going to be sort of, maybe we get there because now AI is urgent. I think, again, right,
They need a motivation.
maybe, and the AI, if that's the push, great, because it's, again, the same as we've been hearing here, right? It's the same thing. If it's personal data implicated by the AI, it's still the personal data laws. So whatever administration is, I think that I would like for the, courage to call them
Mhm.
to get this sorted out in a way that is impactful. And I don't know if the solution is, you have a, overall threshold with state-based derogations like in
Right.
the EU. So for example, if you have a national threshold, the difference between, on the preemption question, the difference between a ceiling with little steps. I mean, a floor with steps or a ceiling with like, I don't know, like ladder. It's the same, right? So GDPR is a harmonization mechanism, but you still have like 50 areas where the states can legislate. That can be the same as in the US, right?
Yeah.
Like there is some sort of baseline. And if there are substantive sticking points that the states are going to say, you know what? This is particularly important to me to do this differently, then that could be the point that and they started doing that in the ADPPA. There is a list of derogations. And maybe the solution is to kind of hone those out, flesh them out, and get a solution there.
Yeah, you don't need the approach that India or China have taken where you regulate over 1 billion people with the same law for everybody.
And I mean, look, this part is a point of contention between the two aisles, let's say, that one is sort of more pro a federal standard, whereas the other is more pro states' rights, right? And that approach is, has been a cornerstone of American history. But my opinion here is that those don't really, this argument of, you know what, we believe in states' rights, it's not really a contradiction, right?
Right.
Yes, you do. But okay, what do you care about? You care about this? Do you just care? The thing that bothers me is you can't just say, I care about states' rights, therefore we can do it all without when that's a clear, like, impediment to a solution, right?
Yeah, you can care about states' rights and still have a federal law.
And also the question is, like, is it a principle or are there particular issues that are of concern?
And they
that
usually
will
can't
get you
enunciate
where
any
you need
particular
to be,
concerns.
You need to be where you are. And I think that's also, sort of a philosophical question on, the tendency that we have to kind of flatten discussions into like all or nothing. And I think the all or nothing, even when each of the views is complete, each of the views is valid, right? Let's start from there. The states' rights view is valid. The federal view is valid. It's the United States. They've both been, kind of yin and yanging each other for a while.
It's not a zero-sum game.
But now, right, I think the brave thing to do, since this has been at an impasse for a long time, and I think there is a big consensus that federal law would be a good thing. Even the states that object to a federal law, they don't object to a federal law. They object to a federal law that would be all or nothing. So I think, respecting everybody's opinions, I think the discussion should be, okay, what are the actual issues here? Can we solve for them in a federal framework?
And do you think that it's realistic for the legislator to actually take that approach? Because it makes a lot of sense. It's a very logical, sensible approach to solve this issue.
Which is not our Congress.
I don't know. Should they call, the director of Norway to, have a session on courage? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a tough, that's why they call it courage, right? Like it's a tough thing to do, but it's been, now that there is a lot of like unprecedented, I've read, surveys about this, right? So there's unprecedented support for this in the public, in industry, in Congress, in the states.
But yet.
And so when that happens, when there is so much substantive concurrence on the concept, but where you need, what you need, and you need to do it. And the only thing that's left is to, get from A to B, but it's hard. That's the part where I think, you've got to be brave and actually do it. I mean, it's a different thing where you don't know what you need to do. You're still finding your way. You don't
know what the answer should be.
Right. But if you know what the answer should be, and that's already a given, I think it's the right thing to do. Is it the thing that will be done? I don't know. I hope it will.
Let me give you a chance to shoot me down here with my rudimentary knowledge of how our Congress works. I think it's a possibility that since there is so much uncertainty at the legislative level as to how to get from point A to the answer, is to create an agency. They've done it for the environmental protection. They've done it for transportation. They've done it for so many other things where they don't have the expertise in Congress. Therefore, they create an agency staffed with the people who have the expertise, and their governing statute or their implementing statute is pretty broad. And it's the agency that makes the regulations that actually implement it.
This is a hypothetical agency.
This is a hypothetical agency.
Yeah. So I think in cases of hypothetical agencies that do that, there is also, you also have, I think that the danger and we've seen it. So it's not like hypothetical. The danger with that is that there are enough stakeholders, including in Congress, that take issue with that approach
that is
as an overreach. And the problem with the approach is, even when you do support the substance, is that it's much more difficult to get to enforce with principles that are with either authority or principles that are very broad and like not specific. And I think that's the part where you can, and this is actually one part where both sides of the aisle can be satisfied with a solution, because one side wants, one side wants more prescriptive and the other side doesn't want like overreach. And the way to do that is to agree on the scope of the mandate and address it. And then you do have the principles, the concept of, we're Congress, we should decide. Okay, you got that. But also the principles of, hey, we need to be able to enforce properly. That actually is a vehicle to do that. So I think the approach, like with the EPA versus West Virginia discussion, right? So one view is, Congress shut down, enforcement. And the other view is, well, now you can do kind of regulations that will facilitate that. So it's an issue with the form rather than the substance.
Right. Because HIPAA is HHS and FERPA is DOE. So, there's some alignment
But
here.
the deal with HIPAA is you have, they're being updated, et cetera, but you have the privacy rule, you have the security rule, right? Like you have actual regulations.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, you have that. So there is, because even if they pass it, they're going to have an agency oversee it. And whether that's in the FTC or an offshoot thereof, or its own agency, one way or the other, we're going to have an agency that's going to oversee enforcement of it.
Yeah. And that's worked. And so, but with the right kind of framework, I think that addresses all, and frankly, the FTC itself is saying it, right?
Yeah.
That we need a stronger mandate. We need this. We would like to have, and that's the reason for the notice of proposed rulemaking, which is they're trying to get the framework, and then the sort of counter argument, okay, well, who's going to determine the rules? We would like to Congress, or we would like to, the agency, but everybody is agreeing that it would be easier to regulate with a set rules, and as well as for, certainty for companies.
Oh, yeah, because, we've had some complications with that with the FTC and their overreach on enforcing privacy.
Looking slightly back at Europe again, next year, 2024, we'll also see another evaluation of the GDPR likely. With your US lens, is there anything that you would want to suggest to the European legislator that should be changed?
Ooh.
So one of the speakers here, one of the commissioners said that it is very difficult to communicate complex legal ideas in a way that normal people understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, isn't that literally what you're expecting every single company to do in their privacy notice and actually enforcing it? And you're saying this is very difficult to do. Well,
and you're saying you can't present guidance because that's
because
the challenge.
It's too difficult, because it's too complex. And I think that is one of the issues that was raised here a lot. So I think they get it, is that there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between, first of all, what was intended to do and what happens in practice, but also between the principle and how it actually impacts normal human beings and their preferences. And I think one of the criticisms for GDPR, which has been voiced here by Europeans themselves, and so that I can just reiterate it, is that
I can vouch for that.
And that there is sort of the road to enforcement here was paved with good intentions of upholding the GDPR, but then you got bogged down with, very specific I'm not going to say teeny tiny, but like, I think it is agreed upon by all of even the European regulators that the NSA and the cookies is not the end all and be all of issues with GDPR enforcement by companies.
Yeah.
And that's sort of been the focus. And I think that the issue there is to kind of find a way to operationalize the enforcement in a way that actually accomplishes what they set out to do. So one of the things that GDPR set out to do was to get away from check the box compliance to substantive compliance.
Yes.
And in some situations, when you look at how this, kind of rolled down the hill, it ended up that you have more form,
more checklists,
and less substance. And that may not be, and that's like unfortunate, right? So I think that the issue there is to try to operationalize or prioritize or carry out the enforcement and guidance such that the real priorities are being brought to fruition, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe it's like the GDPR enforcement needs to be a representative democracy as opposed to a direct democracy. Because, when everybody's voting, like we keep enforcing Google Analytics all day long. So,
well, I will say, Paul, if I think about your question, what I would like to see is that the not the investigations, but the enforcements, the decisions be public.
Yes.
So people can learn what has been taken into consideration, what arguments have been made. We see that with our courts all the time, arguments made back and forth. There's dissents and agreements, but it'd be nice to see that and the outcomes and what they were. That way other companies could learn by example.
And in English, I was going to talk and in English.
Well, let's start by making them public, and then the English is next.
But I do like the machine translation of some of these languages.
Oh gosh,
that leaves something to be desired. Yeah,
that AI ain't good enough yet.
Yeah.
No, again, we should talk to Peter Fleischer to see if he can help there.
Right.
He was raving about translations from Swedish to Urdu, so
Swedish
European language
is actually not bad, but Spanish is very difficult. German is very difficult.
But that's also because their legal language is very difficult, and their sentence constructions and all of that makes it really difficult if you want to have official documentation translated, of course.
Yeah.
For me, when we look at the review of the GDPR, and that's no surprise because it was already in the previous review, but then they decided not to do anything about it. But it is the unclarity about children's data.
Yeah, that's a sore point with me.
We spoke about
children's
it.
data?
Children's data. The age of consent still varies from 13 to 16 across the European Union, depending on which member state you are in. And it seems that it is the location of the child that counts for which age you should apply. Whereas the logic in the GDPR, of course, for application of the law is the location of the company and not the location of the child or the data subject. So that whole mash up, that whole complex situation,
mess.
That's the mess. Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a mess. Protecting children's data is a mess, period, across the world.
Enter the U.S., it's like in poker, right? I see your children's data problems and I raise you, right? Like,
right.
So now we have, right? So we have COPA and we have COPA, COPA 2.0 or the COPA implementation, which de facto deals with teens. And then we have the CPRA and others, which are like, there's a 13 to 16 category, but some
states are calling it under 13
and not. And then, of course, you have, or, almost had, or will soon have again, I don't know, the age appropriate design code in California, which is under 18.
Which we recently spoke about in one of our previous episodes.
Yeah, we just did it on that one. There's another state that's looking to pass it.
Yeah,
was it Oregon?
I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, but Utah, and their social media law, which is so stupid. I'm sorry. The intent was good. The execution sucked.
And I think this issue, right, with
the intention.
the the age. So in Europe, by the way, I'm curious because this maybe is a state-based issue in Europe too. And I'm curious how, but I still haven't seen, so maybe you know, right? Have you seen conclusively good implementation or understanding of how to operationalize the parental consent that you actually need? Because the people that I speak with sort of look at the FTC COPA approved methods as the view, right?
That is literally what we just did a thing on. That is, how does that even prove they're a parent? But yet Utah's, it requires additional identification to prove that you're the guardian or the
Same
parent
in Europe. There are
of this
certain
minor.
states, I know with Spain and another state, you need to do that. But
Spain
how do
and
you
France,
actually
I
do
think.
it?
Yeah.
And then how do you get the age of consent? How do you do the age gating? There's still also, not kind
3
of
times 5.
widespread. Yeah,
That's your age gating.
Yeah, so what age are you old enough to know that, and not too old to have forgotten that and need a calculator?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's an impossible situation because on the one hand, you want data minimization, but for this, you need to collect an awful lot of additional documentation, including all kinds of government IDs. So the idea that we discussed a couple of episodes ago is a government database that with a no-hit system. So you can query via an API the government authentication system that says, yes, this parent belongs to this child. And then you can fire off a message to the parent asking for their confirmation. Something like that.
Or something decentralized, same as like the biometric recognition where you store it locally.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some sort of token that gets pinged and it's a yes or no or something like that. Where it's
and we
not
all know
stored.
we're still going to have the complications there with divorced parents and guardian ad litems and when there's situations and investigations. But good Lord, can't we just get to one thing?
So yeah, a lot remains to be discussed. So Odia, thank you very much for joining us. And that wraps up another episode of Serious Privacy. If you like our episodes, as always, feel free to join the conversation on LinkedIn. You'll find us under Serious Privacy. Like and review us in your favorite podcast app or on your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to get in touch, you'll find Kay on Twitter and other social media as Heart of Privacy, myself as Europol B. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data and get credible, cited answers based on NIMD research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.